Hi all, welcome to Revolutionary Education, or RevEd. My name is Jack, and this is my partner Dante. Thank you for coming out today. Our first lesson, titled Direct and Symbolic Action, will be focusing on gaining shared vocabulary surrounding two types of political action that we call direct and symbolic. By the end of the lesson, we want to expand your knowledge of direct and symbolic action so you can differentiate between them and, with the tools laid out in the rest of the course, determine if taking a given action is worth your time. Our introduction to this lesson is the second video in this playlist, created by YouTuber and video essayist Big Joel. Joel made some comments that apply to both our current political situation and the lesson at hand. Watch the video once now, before the lesson, and once again when the lesson is over. Reflect on if you agree or disagree with Joel, and how your opinions on the topic might have changed with a better understanding of direct and symbolic action. First, we'll define direct and symbolic action. Direct action aims to produce a specific and immediate effect. The effect is often a direct result of the action, hence the name. Symbolic action, by contrast, aims to create change in the actions of others, like lawmakers. Symbolic action often serves in progressive movements to create and promote the message behind direct actions. Direct actions accomplish the material progress of the movement's intended change. These two arms of political movements can reinforce each other and exchange ideas. Before we get to understanding these definitions more deeply, we should understand why this even matters. Direct action groups are numerous across the United States, but they often occupy a firmly symbolic role in progressive movements. It is rare to find an above-ground or visible direct action group in reality because of the risk associated with progressive direct actions. Very few of these above-ground direct action groups actually engage in direct action. It is dishonest or misguided to call a symbolic action direct in order to make it sound more material than it actually is. Moving on to the next reason, the interplay and exchange between symbolic and direct actions form the basis of successful progressive movements, and have done so throughout history. We will cover this in more detail in future lessons, but for now you have to accept that both symbolic and direct actions are valuable tools to progressive movements. To expand on this, militant progressives tend to primarily engage in direct action, while pacifist progressives tend to engage in symbolic action. Both types of action have a place in politics, and being able to distinguish between them will help you decide if taking a given action is worth your time. Just a note before we move on, direct and symbolic action is not an assessment of the quality, risk, morality, or effectiveness of a given action. We will cover these in more detail in future lessons. Let's get into some examples of the two types of actions. Recall that direct actions have a specific and immediate effect, while symbolic actions aim to create changes in the actions of others. The diagrams illustrate the cyclical nature of direct and symbolic actions as they exist in political movements. As symbolic actions occur, they influence and provide context to direct actions, and vice versa. Examples of direct action include sabotage of construction equipment, stopping the cops from arresting someone, what's called a de-arrest, disrupting a planned event so it cannot continue, and going on strike. Examples of symbolic actions include marches and protests, even illegal ones, signing petitions, writing letters, and making phone calls, donating to nonprofits, and making a post on social media. Can you think of the specific and immediate effect of each direct action example? How about for the symbolic actions? You should be able to come up with a specific and immediate effect for the direct actions column and not be able to do so for the symbolic actions column. Now it's time to practice our skills using real-life examples. You may already know that at the time this class is being recorded, there are ongoing protests against French Prime Minister Macron. Many French workers' unions across differing levels of militancy have united against an undemocratic move by Macron to raise the retirement age against the votes and wishes of the French public. I want you to practice determining if the given actions are symbolic or direct. To do this, you might have to ask yourself, what is the specific and immediate effect of this action? Keep in mind for context that these are all real actions taken by French protesters. Action 1. Garbage collection workers going on strike. Action 2. Protesters burning piles of garbage. Action 3. Protesters performing a de-arrest. Action 4. Protesters providing first aid to those in need. Think about whether each action is symbolic or direct. Pause the video here if you need more time to decide. Let's go over our answers for each action. Garbage collection workers going on strike is a direct action. The specific and immediate effect of the action is that the corporation or government body making money from the collection workers' services is not able to do that during the strike. Protesters burning piles of garbage is a symbolic action. This is because the primary effect of the action is to evoke a response from others. There is no immediate material result of the action itself. Protesters performing a de-arrest is a direct action. There is a specific and immediate effect on the victim of the arrest in keeping them out of jail. Protesters providing first aid to those in need is a direct action for a similar reason. There is a direct outcome of the action that materially changes and improves the lives of the victims. Remember, the reason we're going over this in such detail is because mainstream information about what direct action means is mostly false or misleading. We're aiming to correct the record. If you feel confident in your ability to differentiate between direct and symbolic actions, feel free to skip ahead to the next section called Exchange of Ideas. For those that want more practice, welcome to round 2 of the Action Types game. Action 1. Posting about the news coverage of a French protest. Action 2. Blocking electrical power to Prime Minister Macron's home. Action 3. Providing free electricity to schools and hospitals. Action 4. Lobbying Macron's office to revoke the new law. Think, what is the specific and immediate effect of each action? We'll go over the answers for round 2 now. Posting about the news coverage of a French protest is a symbolic action. Blocking electrical power to Prime Minister Macron's home is a direct action. Providing free electricity to schools and hospitals is a direct action. Asking Prime Minister Macron's office to revoke the new law is a symbolic action. As an aside, I got a good question during our live class about whether lobbying is a symbolic or direct action. This question raises another important discussion about where symbolism ends and direct action begins. In my opinion, it depends on how much material exchange there is during a lobbying action. Persuasive speech on its own is a symbolic action, but if there is an exchange of material goods, that becomes a direct action. Even small amounts of money from an individual, say $15, might be considered a symbolic action, depending on the scale of wealth a politician may otherwise have access to. Take the example of a super PAC, or a life-changing amount of money from an individual donor. This is a direct action because the politician receiving the money, in order to keep this new status and wealth, will cave to the will of their donor or donors more often than not. The specific and immediate effect of the donation is typically protection of the interests or wealth of the corporate donor. For politicians like Bernie Sanders, who are funded by small donations, any small single donor does not hold more influence on the politician than the aggregate will of the majority of small donors. In this case, I would call donation a symbolic action, because there is not a specific and immediate effect or vote associated with the donation. Instead, the motivation behind the action is that it will protect the interests of the people at some point, rather than in the next Supreme Court case, for instance. To expand on this, we will talk about the exchange of ideas between direct and symbolic actions next. The exchange of ideas section will mostly be focused on how symbolic and direct actions in political movements can reinforce or affect each other. First, I'll explain best practices around a strategic, symbolic action, then tell you why I think this is the best practice. We believe symbolic actions are most effective when they support the motives of direct actors. It is even better when direct actors are involved in the messaging behind their own actions. We think this provides context for material progress, and even if a direct action is not successful itself, can help push the movement forward, so the next actions will be. With this knowledge, take an example of a climate activist who disrupts construction of an oil pipeline by chaining herself to the construction equipment. Which of the two options would be a better tweet in support of land and water defenders? A. We need more people like Jessica, the name of this climate activist. Or B. Climate change is real. Ask, which is more connected to current events? Which sends a message in support of direct actors? Option A is a better symbolic action than option B. Option A is in clear support of direct actors, while option B is vague and disconnected from current events. While option A offers the reader a chance to learn more about the climate activist, including the reason she is taking action and how she did it, option B simply states an abstract judgment. While option A might be likened to an outstretched hand, option B could be likened to a closed door. Now, why do we think that symbolic actions work better this way? It may seem like common sense, but even so, it is necessary to have a good basis in logic when presenting any idea worth considering. When symbolic actions work alongside or in tandem with direct actions, it pushes the movement faster towards a political goal. Looking back at our example, if you shared option A with a large audience, chances are that many of them would look into who Jessica is. Some of these people might even be inspired to take action themselves based on her precedent. This is much more likely when a symbolic action is an outstretched hand than when the action is a closed door, to use our comparison from earlier. By contrast, if a symbolic action is loosely connected to current events or direct actions, it loses the importance to an observer, especially in cases where symbolic actions advocate for something opposed to the actions of current direct actors. The symbolic action makes little sense to the observer or progress for the movement. This ideological incongruity can muddy the waters for observers and prevent progressive changes from happening. Now we've been talking in detail about quality symbolic actions. To expand on the idea of direct action's role in political change, I'll ask you to listen to a clip from the Malcolm X speech, Message to the Grassroots. X gave this speech in 1963 to a nonviolent Christian activist conference in Detroit, Michigan. A transcript of this speech is available in the description of this video. There are a few annotations on this transcript that will be useful when answering the discussion questions. The discussion questions will be made available in the video after the speech on this playlist. Please wait until the whole clip has been played before reading the discussion questions.
Sometimes I'm inclined to believe that many of our people are using this word revolution loosely, without taking careful consideration what this word actually means and what its historic characteristics are. When you study the historic nature of revolutions, the motive of a revolution, the objective of a revolution, and the result of a revolution, and the methods used in a revolution, you may change words. You may devise another program. You may change your goal and you may change your mind. Look at the American Revolution in 1776. That revolution was for what? For land. How was it? Why did they want land? Independence. How was it carried out? Bloodshed. Number one, it was based on land, the basis of independence. And the only way they could get it was bloodshed. The French Revolution What was it based on? The landless against the landlord. What was it for? Land. How did they get it? Bloodshed. Was no love lost. Was no compromise. Was no negotiation. I'm telling you, you don't know what a revolution is. Because when you find out what it is, you'll get back in the alley. You'll get out of the way. Just a moment. The Russian Revolution. What was it based on? Land. The landless against the landlord. How did they bring it about? Bloodshed. You haven't got a revolution that doesn't involve bloodshed. And you're afraid to bleed. I said you're afraid to bleed. Long as the white man sent you to Korea, you bled. He sent you to Germany, you bled. He sent you to the South Pacific to fight the Japanese, you bled. You bleed for white people. But when it comes time to seeing your own churches being bombed and little black girls murdered, you haven't got no blood. You bleed when the white man says bleed. You bite when the white man says bite. And you bark when the white man says bark. I hate to say this about us, but it's true. How you gonna be nonviolent in Mississippi as violent as you were in Korea? How can you justify being nonviolent in Mississippi and Alabama when your churches are being bombed and your little girls are being murdered, and at the same time you're gonna get violent with Hitler and Tojo and somebody else that you don't even know? If violence is wrong in America, violence is wrong abroad. If it's wrong to be violent, defending black women and black children and black babies and black men, then it's wrong for America to draft us and make us violent abroad in defense of her. The Chinese Revolution, they wanted land. They threw the British out, along with the Uncle Tom Chinese. Yeah, they did. They set a good example. When I was in prison, I read an article, and don't be shocked when I say I was in prison. You're still in prison. That's what America means, prison. When I was in prison, I read an article in Life magazine showing a little Chinese girl, 9 years old. Her father was on his hands and knees, and she was pulling the trigger because he was an Uncle Tom Chinaman. When they had the revolution over there, they took a whole generation of Uncle Toms, just wiped them out. And within 10 years, that little girl became a full-grown woman. No more Toms in China. And today it's one of the toughest, roughest, most feared countries on this earth by the white man, because there are no Uncle Toms over there. Of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And when you see that you got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who had problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you know how you can get yours straight. Please. There's been a revolution, a black revolution going on in Africa. In Kenya, the Mau Mau were revolutionaries. They were the ones who made the word uhuru. They were the ones who brought it to the fore. The Mau Mau, they were revolutionaries. They believed in scorched earth. They knocked everything aside that got in their path. And their revolution also was based on land, a desire for land. In Algeria, the northern part of Africa, a revolution took place. The Algerians were revolutionists. They wanted land. France offered to let them be integrated into France. They told France to hell with France. They wanted some land, not some France. And they engaged in a bloody battle. So I cite these various revolutions, brothers and sisters, to show you, you don't have a peaceful revolution. You don't have a turn the other cheek revolution. There's no such thing as a nonviolent revolution. Only kind of revolution that's nonviolent is the Negro revolution. The only revolution based on loving your enemy is the Negro revolution. The only revolution in which the goal is a desegregated lunch counter, a desegregated theater, a desegregated park, and a desegregated public toilet. You can sit down next to white folks on the toilet. That's no revolution. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. The white man knows what a revolution is. He knows that the black revolution is worldwide in scope and in nature. The black revolution is sweeping Asia, sweeping Africa. It's rearing its head in Latin America. The Cuban Revolution, that's a revolution. They overturned the system. Revolution is in Asia. Revolution is in Africa. And the white man is screaming because he sees revolution in Latin America. How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is? You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. And you sitting around here like a knot on these folks, no matter how much they hate me. No, you need a revolution. Who ever heard of a revolution where they lock arms, as Reverend Klieg was pointing out beautifully, singing, "We shall overcome"? Just tell me you don't do that in a revolution. You don't do any singing, you're too busy swinging.
Our discussion questions on Message to the Grassroots will center around 4 different vocabulary terms that X uses in the speech. Each set of questions will get progressively more difficult as it progresses. If you need help with the first or second question, see the answer guide for a detailed response for each question. The third question of each set is more often a personal reflection. We have included a synthesized version of our own opinions on the topic, but you are free to disagree with our thoughts here. Our goal with each set of questions is to introduce the key themes of the course. These key themes include: who are your allies and who are your enemies, which corresponds to the vocabulary term our people; tactics for progress, which corresponds to the vocabulary term Black Revolution; racism in progress, which corresponds to the vocabulary term Uhuru; and what progress requires, which corresponds to the vocabulary term turn the other cheek. After working through the discussion questions yourself, please see the following video in this playlist for the correct answers.